welcome everybody to the Living Proof Recovery podcast. I'm your guest host, Tony, and this is an honor for me. Uh, I had mentioned doing something like this. It's the first time I've ever done it, so it's going to be kind of rocky. So just bear with me. But
You're gonna do just fine, man.
of course, everybody knows Brian and Evan, and so we thought we'd get together tonight. They asked me to come over and host, and I had to think about a little bit of some things to come up with to ask these guys about recovery and living life in recovery. So I came up with some questions, and I'm going to ask some of those, but also I'm just going to kind of freestyle a little bit as well. So they don't know the questions I'm going to ask them. So, but first of all, I just want to each guy get a little brief sobriety date. What I mean,
Okay.
people might know, but let's refresh them. So
Okay.
I'll go first. I'm Tony. I'm an alcoholic, and my sobriety date is July 19th, 2006. And for that, I'm extremely grateful.
And I'm Evan. Sobriety date is January 2nd, 2022. Tony is also my sponsor. I have a home group, have a great support group of men in my life that I'm very grateful for, sponsees, and just true friends today.
Yeah, and I'm Brian. I'm an alcoholic as well. My sobriety date is March 7th, 2021. I also have a sponsor, home group. I think it's important to say, like, we always introduce ourselves as alcoholics, but we're so much more than that. We're also husbands, fathers, mentors, just everyday average people, just trying to get through life, just try to learn and grow and, stuff like that. So, sometimes I feel like we paint ourselves in a box of that's all that we are, and we're so much more than that. So, thanks for coming out tonight, man, and doing this. I've been looking forward to it because we don't know what you're going to ask. So I'm pretty excited about it. So looking forward to it.
Yeah, I appreciate it, and that was I never really. I mean, I have thought about what you said. We are a lot of different things. And I really didn't know that when I first got sober until I got around a lot of people. Jockeys, doctors, garbage men, landscapers, car salesmen. Just all kinds of different. And it was good that I was exposed to all those different types of people because it helped me realize how far reaching this disease is. So
yeah, and like it's obviously big part of who we are, but it doesn't define who we are.
Yeah.
We're so much more than a disease.
Yeah,
You know.
yeah, we are. That's a good point too.
Really still blows my mind that people like ask me to sponsor them. I'm like, how sick are you?
Right.
Like, do this much. But it's awesome.
Yeah, it's kind of crazy. Like if you look back how far we've all come, it's like, man, you wouldn't have asked me that years ago. You would have, wanted me to get the hell away from you,
Right.
not help you.
Yeah. Yeah, that's true. And if you ever think that you're not doing enough, and my experience is, if and I've had those points, I like, God, I'm just not doing enough. People will start showing up in your life, and it's just my experience.
Yeah,
So,
for sure.
if you pray and do what you're supposed to do, and you're needing to work with somebody, God put them in your life
For
so.
sure.
But so I came up with some questions, kind of on the spur. It took me about 5-10 minutes to come up with these, and we'll see how they go. And both of you guys chime in on this, and this is not in any type of linear order or anything. It's just some kind of bouncing around. But
Okay.
So my first question I came up with is, what was it that brought you to the point of surrender, and what keeps you plugged in?
You want to go first?
Sure. So, I've been trying at this sobriety thing for quite some time, for 10 years. And this last go round, it was finally for me. It was for me. And, what brought me in was just, this go round was after having some time sober and relapsing, the guilt and the shame and everything is so much worse than
For
before
sure.
I ever experienced sobriety ever. And it was just, my physical bottom wasn't as low as it had been in the past, but my emotional and mental bottom was so much deeper than it had ever been. And I made the decision in my head that I was done and had to do something different, but I was still on that edge of, I wanted to try to do it my way and not let people know that I was withdrawing and needed to come off the shit, and tried to do it my way and did something that night, a couple pills, and trying to just take the edge off of my detox after my wife had put me through hell that day, knowing she questioned me about it. Of course, I lied to her. Um, so that night, I did a couple pills, which was nothing compared to what I'd been doing, and fell out in my driveway. And when I came to, that was when I was like, okay, you can't fucking do this by yourself. So that was when I made the decision to pick up the phone and reach out to get into treatment. But this go around. It was definitely the mental and emotional bottom that I had hit was worse than I had ever been. So that's kind of what brought me back into treatment and back into sobriety with no reservations for the first time. I'd always went to get sober before with the thought of, one day I can drink a beer again. One day I'll smoke a joint again. I just won't go back to heroin and meth and, all the crazy shit I did. So this was the first time that I was like, okay, you are really an alcoholic and a drug addict. No other way around it. I'm not special. I've got this thing. And I was just done. I put my hands up and just had to let some other men show me how to do this thing.
So I'll go ahead and answer the first part, then we'll just bounce back to where you can answer the second part of the question. We'll just do it like that. Um, you,
I forgot.
I figured you did. Yeah. So I think my story is very similar to Evan's. Like in the big book, it uses a phrase of incomprehensible demoralization, and I just been beaten like emotionally. Now my last run, I was not in real bad spot physically because it was very short. My last run was not long at all. Um, they tend to get shorter, so I wasn't in a really bad spot physically, but I was broken emotionally. It finally clicked to me. I had a childhood friend tell me how it was. He got in my face and he basically told me all the ways that I had hurt him and how bad I had hurt him. And I've been told by people in the past how much I'd hurt them, but it never really registered. I was all about me. It was kind of like, yeah, I might have hurt you, but what about me? And when that happened, then I started to see from the fallout of that, I started to see how I was affecting my wife. Um, I was going back to treatment, and I went and told my mother and my father, and I saw their tears and how worried sick about me they were, and I had to tell my kids where I was going. and they were worried about me. Then it really just, it was like that was the straw that broke the camel's back finally, of seeing the wreckage. That's kind of what got me to surrender. Now, when that first happened, immediately I was not in a state of surrender. I was still in a state of denial. But after sitting in it for a little while, I started to see it, and I couldn't deny it anymore. There was no more running from it. You know, it's like, this is the reality. And if something doesn't change, I'm going to die. And that's kind of to the point where I was at, is I have two choices, you know, go on to the bitter end or seek help. And thankfully that I had some resources, you know, from previous times of trying to get sober. You know, I had a sponsor, you know, so I was able to get in touch with someone so that he could kind of point me, you know, in the right direction and get me some help. So the second part of the question, that was, what do we do to stay plugged in?
Yeah, yeah. What
Yeah,
keeps
really.
you? What keeps you plugged
what
in?
keeps me plugged in? I gotta give Evan credit for this one. It's saying yes. You know, that was something that he introduced to me a couple of years ago. And that's really what helps me, is when someone needs help, I say yes. You know, working with newcomers, still got a home group, you know, still talk to my sponsor. You know, I try to keep this thing on the forefront as a real piece of business. You know, I try not to get to a point to where feel like I'm too well, you know, to where I don't need to still do things. Um, and to be honest with you, like, I'm passionate about it. So it's not like a job, you know. I don't view it like that. You know, I think maybe I did in the beginning. It was like, I've got to do all these things, you know, I've got to help all these people, or it's like taxing. But it got to the point through the process to where it's just what I do now, you know. So, and I don't feel right if I don't do them. So that kind of keeps me in the middle of everything. Just try to be of service wherever I can. I don't have to try to go out and save the world, you know, but like you said, like, I can always do more,
Yeah.
you know. So having like a growth mindset,
All right.
I think, keeps me kind of plugged in.
Yeah, and the effort that I put in to getting high and staying high and
Yeah.
trying to get high and get the resources.
Mm-hmm.
I mean,
We're very resourceful
yeah,
people.
I mean, so if we, like it says in the book, half is
Half the
deal,
deal.
you know.
Yeah,
But
one half. Yeah.
so, well, thanks, Brian.
So how I stay plugged in, very similar. Like Brian had mentioned, the whole say yes thing. That was something that I picked up on early on in my recovery journey this go around, and I just started to. I heard it. It clicked with me, and I just started to apply it to my life
Mhm.
very early on. And then, you know, so like I said, I have a home group. You're my sponsor. I stay in contact with you. I'll probably call you what, at least 4 or 5 times a week.
Oh,
Usually,
yeah,
you know,
yeah,
stay
easily.
in touch, and with sponsees, and you know, through what we're the ultimate goal of this podcast, and then you know, we're working on trying to put together some kind of little community event, and you know, just giving back, you know, to everyone in need that I can, because this was given so freely to me, you know, so I have to pay it forward. I have to keep it going. So, you know, through sponsorship and our men's group, you know, staying plugged in, we started up our men's group again
Mhm.
last night.
Yeah.
And I'll tell you what, I felt like on fucking fire last night when I,
Car
after we
wheels
were
did
done.
touch the ground on
Yeah, I was like, that was awesome to get, because we took a little break for what, 6 weeks or so, and that was, I was like, man, I needed this, you know.
Yeah.
So, you know, there's a lot of things I do, you know, to even at work, you know, I'll get to work with a few guys in recovery, so it's like I get to stay plugged in 24 hours a day, every day of the, you know, every day of the week. It's awesome.
You know, I mentioned earlier that like this growth mindset, and I think what's different for me now is I do things with purpose.
Mm-hmm.
And I think that really carries me through day to day stuff, as far as staying plugged in,
Mhm.
like I do things with a sense of having a purpose of why I'm doing them. I'm not just going through the motions today. So if I'm like purposely minded of why I'm doing something, instead of just trying to control the outcome of it, like my intention of doing it is good. So it makes it easier for me to do things
Yeah.
as far as staying plugged in.
Yeah, I agree with that. And you had mentioned, you got me thinking about something funny. You had mentioned reservations, and all the reservations I made, like I'm going to do it this time. And I remember one
Mhm.
time I'm just going to drink wine coolers.
Bartles and James.
I'm just going to drink wine coolers, and I did for about, I don't know, a few weeks.
30 minutes. Yeah.
And then I tried. I'm just going to smoke a little weed, and
Yeah.
and when I finally did the last time I went and I went into the Hillen place, there was a term the guy down there using. I knew I was probably an alcoholic, but they always say, guy effed around and caught alcoholism.
Mhm.
And that's what happened to me. I knew that everything had to go, lifestyle, everything, behaviors,
Mhm.
substances, all that stuff, the way I treated people, all that stuff. So,
Yeah, sometimes we got to stick around long enough to get a diagnosis.
yeah.
Because that was my thing is in and out, in and out, in and out. 1 week, 2 weeks. I never stood around long enough to get a diagnosis.
Yeah.
So,
Yeah.
so I could diagnose myself with alcoholism.
And unfortunately, in today's world, a lot of people don't get that chance
No,
because
they don't.
the dope that's on the street is literally triple X poison.
Mhm.
I mean,
Yep.
it's all poison, but this is the nasty stuff. So,
Yep, for sure.
well, good.
It's a good start.
All right. Well, okay. So this next one, this is one I kind of always think about, and I know how it applies to me. But family history, trauma, DNA. What do you think contributed to your alcoholism or your addiction?
That's a good question. You want me to go?
Yeah, you start it.
All right. So DNA, 100%. It's been proven like this is a genetic biological thing. You have to be wired a certain way to be one of us. Um, the phenomenon of craving, the way my body reacts abnormally to alcohol, drugs, things like that. I was born with that. Now, trauma, PTSD, I have those things. That exacerbated and made worse um, the condition that I already had. So it was a big contributing factor to my progression. So and it gave me an excuse of something that I could blame um, my behaviors or my condition on. So I would always say things like, well, yeah, you drink too if you've been through what I've been through, or if you had the same monkeys chattering in your head that I do, you'd be doing the same damn thing, or, oh, you just don't understand. It was the way I was raised. It's like I always had something to blame it on, but a lot of that's bullshit because I have an older brother who's raised in the same household and he's nothing like me. And he's had a lot of traumas as well. But he's not an alcoholic because he's not wired the way that I am. So my DNA plays a huge role in it, but the other stuff is an important factor as well. It's like putting gasoline on the fire.
Yeah.
It's like it's already burning, but now we're gonna throw some gas on it,
Yeah.
and now it's nuclear. So it's another good question.
Yeah, our guy Noah Levine, who the book we're in right now, he's a big proponent for the childhood trauma,
Mm-hmm.
and which I believe too is a big factor along with the just hereditary and stuff like that.
Oh, yeah.
What about you, Evan?
So yeah, like Brian said, I believe I was born this way, and I was just wired to be this way, because I can look back and not so much like I know some of my parents' history, but my parents are not one of us, you know. So I don't think it was passed down to me that way. You know what I mean? That way, in that sense. But I can remember even as a child at a young age, like everything I was doing, it was alcoholically, and you know what I mean. I had a very addictive personality at a young age, from whether it was wrestling action figures or
Right.
playing sports, football, you know what I mean, and basketball and all that. Like I had a very addictive personality, even at a very young age, and um, so I was definitely the signs were there at a young age, and I've had traumas over my life, and not so much like Brian, and our traumas are different.
Right.
Everyone's are, but a lot of mine I think stem from um, being raised by my mom only. Like she did everything she could, and you know times were different, and only seeing my dad a couple days a month, and never having like a consistent father figure in my life, like a day on the daily. You know what I mean?
Right.
For a long time I used that, and I ran with older guys, so I got into a lot of trouble, seen a lot of things, did a lot of things that were traumatizing, for me. And that definitely played a role in it. But now today I can see that I really use that as an excuse though,
Mm-hmm.
as well. It was an excuse. Like times were different back then than they are today, especially when your parents are divorced. You know what I
And
mean?
that doesn't mean that it didn't affect you.
Right,
You're
right.
right,
It affected me. I wanted more of a closer
Right,
relationship
for
with
sure.
my dad than I had when I was a child. Not saying that he wasn't there, nothing like that. It was different. It was
Yeah.
a couple days out of the month, and then I was with my mom all the time until it got to the point to where I was older, and she kicks me out because I was fucking wild. You know what I mean? And I moved in with my dad, and and over as I've gotten older now, like my relationship with my dad is great. The relationship with my mom is great. Like everything is awesome, and I can see where it was like, yeah, but I could have made more of an effort for that as well when I was younger for that relationship. I could have put in some more effort, but I didn't. You know what I mean? So, but I used that, and it did affect me though. I know that when I
For
was
sure.
younger, it did
Yeah.
affect me. Um, but yeah, so what was the other part of it? It was
That was it.
Okay.
So
Yeah.
I can look back at like 6 years old, and I hadn't had a drink yet. I hadn't had a drug yet, but man, I needed one. Like I
Yeah.
needed one. Like that whole spiritual malady it talks about in the big book. I've had that my entire life. That feeling of I'm worthless. I'm not good enough. I don't feel like I belong anywhere. All that stuff, and a drink of alcohol made that go away. And so I can look back. So if I wouldn't have had the trauma, I'd probably still be sitting here today talking about this because that's not what makes me an alcoholic. Like I said, it makes it so much worse, you know, um, and it just makes it easier, to get caught up,
Right.
because I'm trying to self-medicate something,
Mhm.
because that's the only way I knew how to deal with anything was to medicate.
Yeah, however we get it, if it goes untreated, it'll kill us.
Yeah, for sure.
And you was talking about at a young age, I can remember, and I didn't think of it like any other way until I got into Alcoholics Anonymous. Was that, you know, when I was 7, I got a tape recorder, which was a big deal then.
Right.
The little rectangular tape recorder,
yeah.
Oh yeah.
and I would tape myself cussing and replay it, and that would I guess that was my way of,
It's preparing you for this. Yeah.
maybe it was my disease, I don't
Yeah.
know. I'm not a psychologist, but sure makes sense,
Yeah.
I think we do behave in different ways, and it goes back to the, uh, like I haven't taken a drink in 19 years, but let me tell you what, I still have some drunken behavior sometimes.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
So,
And even like I said, I started using at a young age. I was like 13,
Mhm.
when I started drinking and experimenting with different drugs and stuff. And but mine was really brought on like full fledged by the doctors.
Mm-hmm.
Now it probably still would have led me down the same road
Right.
had that not been the case, but it was just so much easier
Just
for me
might have got there a lot later in life.
because I was prescribed to all these pain medications
Right.
for so long as a teenager,
Yeah.
and high powered
Right.
pain medication. So I think it just sped it up for me.
Yeah.
Like Jeremy was on here talking about how he didn't start until he was mid-30s, and I'm like, man, yeah, late bloomer,
Yeah.
But
For sure. Yeah.
mine was just kind of almost feels like it was almost like it was put on me because I needed them at that time, but I didn't need them for as long of a period as these doctors had me on all that shit.
Yeah.
So
hell, it's all there for you now, according
Yeah.
to TikTok. All right. All right. That was a good insight. So this third one I come up with, and this kind of bounces off one a little bit, but tell us about your journey to this point, recovery centers, treatment, legal issues, medical, etc. Just kind of tell us about your journey, uh, and to up to right now where you're at now. What was the major things? I know you had some legal problems. Like I had a lot of medical problems because of this disease. So kind of answer that a little bit if you can.
I mean, when I was younger, before I hadn't had any legal troubles in quite some time, but before I ever tried to get sober for the first time, yeah, I would get arrested for possession, always possession or public intoxication, and stuff like that. Burglary. I had felony cases in Bullitt County and Jefferson County all at the same time, and that's kind of what led me into my first attempt at getting sober was through the Bullitt County Drug Court program. Um, but that was, like I said, that was to like 2011. And luckily, I haven't been in any legal trouble since then, even while I was in active addiction since then. But it's been multiple treatment centers after that, and several different attempts at detoxes and change of scenery, locations from going to Florida and, just trying different things. But the journey, and then I go back as far as like the legal stuff is concerned. Had I really got what I deserved from all the things I have done,
We wouldn't be sitting.
I shouldn't be sitting here had I been caught for most of the shit I've done.
Probably none of us would be sitting.
Right.
No.
So, but the journey itself, man, I can say that, yeah, like had I got this on the first attempt, I'd be sitting here with what
20
14 years
Yeah.
sober today,
Yeah.
but the journey has been fucking awesome.
Mhm.
And I can look back on it even through the dark times when I was actively using, not saying that was awesome,
Right.
but now I can look back at it and I've grown so much and I've learned so much through all this trial and error. And there's a reason that I'm still sitting here today because, after several overdoses through my experience, and waking up in the hospital to doctors high-fiving over top of me, to falling out in my driveway on my last run when I was out there this last time. And, God's got me here for a reason, because there's so many of us who didn't make it out.
Mm-hmm.
And I'm very grateful for that. So I just, I'm just, the journey has been full of ups and downs, but overall, I'm like, man, it has shaped me to who I am today, and it ultimately brought me to my wife, you know what I mean? Which in turn, I have amazing children, and, we're building this life together now, and we're both in recovery. And, the journey is, I never want to forget even the bad times. I don't want to forget it. I never want to forget them, and the feeling of going back out and how that feels. Like I never always try to keep that stuff in the front of my mind. I don't want to forget it. But I mean, the journey's been amazing. It's brought me to you guys. It's all the other men that are in my life, and our tight group of guys that we have, and everything I've got to experience, and all the things I've got to do, and it's just been awesome. It really has. Like, I used to think that being an alcoholic and a drug addict was the worst thing that ever happened to me, but now today I know it's literally the best thing that ever happened to me.
I know.
In some crazy way.
When I used to hear people say that, I'd be like, "You're full of shit."
Yeah.
Like, this is like, what do you mean? Like, this is a curse of my life. Like,
Yeah.
what are you talking about?
I've got to live multiple lives in one,
Mm-hmm.
and come back from the darkest of the fucking depths, you know what I mean? And get to come back and really experience life, or how we're supposed to.
Yeah, it's just a reversal for me of bad decisions I made. That's kind of how I look at it,
Yeah.
We're all just a one bad decision away from, 6 o'clock news, 11 o'clock news, or whatever. So we,
So we can look at that one of two ways, so there's two sides to that coin. We're also one good decision, one spiritual application away from, really experiencing something special in our lives. So if we look at it that way too, it's like, if I keep doing all the right stuff, I'm maybe one meeting or one something, or one good act of kindness or one thing away from really getting to experience some of the blessings that we get in sobriety. I think that for me, like, the journey is about giving meaning to my struggle. It's like, if I look back, I've had some legal trouble too, not nearly as much as Evan has, but I've been locked up a couple times, really pissed away a really good career opportunity in the military due to drugs and alcohol, in my behavior. In my early 20s, I could be retired today, with a pension, but I'm not. But that's okay, so there's, the DUIs, there's, I've been to treatment, inpatient twice, outpatient twice. There's the divorces, the house in foreclosure, all the financial struggles, the suicide attempts, there's all of this stuff. But I think you guys have probably heard me say this before, but I really believe that we are uniquely qualified to help the person that we used to be. So if you're someone who's broke and you're no longer broken, you can help someone who is broken. If you couldn't stay sober and now you're staying sober, you can help someone who can't stay sober. So I try to give meaning to all that stuff that I went through, because I have an opportunity to do that. Evan mentioned that I think you mentioned it too, Tony, that a lot of people don't get the opportunity because, they don't make it. And it'd be kind of shitty of me to make it and to not take advantage of that and try to give back. So I think that, just in this journey, I've been able, through my own past, I've been able to help two of my children, go through some similar type things, like some really hard stuff. Um, all because I got sober. If I wouldn't have got sober, if I was still absentee dad, aloof dad on the couch, not knowing what the hell's going on, I would have missed those opportunities. So I think the journey, like, it's just, the struggles are part of the journey. Like, I don't know her name, but there was a girl that came into RAC one time, and I was in an AA meeting there, and she said, if I could give you guys the gift of sobriety right now, I wouldn't give it to you. I thought, what a bitch. It was the first thing that popped in my head. What a bitch. And she said, the reason I wouldn't give it to you is I wouldn't want to rob you of the journey. And I was like, oh, okay. Well, maybe she's not a bitch. I was like, that makes sense. It made sense to me. And I was like, oh, okay. Like, I got to go through some trials and some tribulations. And when I do that and come out on the other side, I can really appreciate things for what they are. Then I can really start to have some real gratitude because I've been in the low spots.
Yeah.
I know what that's like. But I know what the high spots are like too. And I know what it's like in the middle, so, I can, if I just see things for what they are, just try to experience the journey instead of try to come up with this idea of what I know, I know what it's going to look like. When I get to 5 years sober, I know what that's going to look like. And I know how I'm going to get there. And, just roll with it.
Right,
If I can just roll with it and just accept things for what they are, man, life's so much better.
Just being in the moment.
Yeah.
You know?
Yeah. I've said this on here before too, that, like, my marriage today is better than it's ever been. It's better than it was when we first got together. I was in the madness then, so, I don't know. I just think there's just so many opportunities that we have, and we don't really a lot of times realize how capable we are and how many opportunities that we have. I think this is the only disease that leaves the sufferer. When you recover from it, you're in a better place than before you really had it. You know what I mean? Like, I'm in a better spot now in my life because of my alcoholism. Because I had to actually, like Evan said, like, look at some things in my life. There's so many people that are just on that line that never really cross the line enough to want to change. So they stay stuck right at that line. But I think, it's a gift for us in a way to have alcoholism because we get pushed across that line to the point where we've got to make some real changes and we've got to really do some things with our life. And it's almost like we have an advantage over other people that aren't alcoholics because we get to do all this internal work and the inventories and right or wrongs, clean up our past, get connected with God again. And we get to do all these things because we have to live, but there's so many people that are just teetering on that line where they don't have to do that stuff. They would benefit greatly from it, but they're not pushed over that line to where they say, oh, I got to make a change. But we get pushed over that line. So it's like, oh, I'm a totally different person, so I think it's kind of like a superpower being a recovered alcoholic.
Yeah. And, you had mentioned about, like, for me, getting sober was more than just not drinking and using drugs
100%.
anymore.
100%.
Recovery and AA and the fellowship and sponsorship taught me how to be an adult. I mean, I was codependent. I don't know that I would have never found that type of, if I'd have been responsible. Say if I wasn't an alcoholic, I might have just been this brat, this 40-year-old brat who didn't have a drug problem, but was smooching off some woman.
Yeah.
But it taught me a lot more than just putting down the drink. So it's definitely taught me life skills along the way as well.
Yeah.
So. All right. So I'm going to skip 4, maybe come back to it. I like this number 5. Why do you think so many people struggle with step 3, and some advice on that?
You want to go first, or do you want me to go?
I mean, I just truly think, and because I did for a long time, I think people overthink it so
There
much.
you go. Ding,
You
ding,
know,
ding.
because I know for me, I was never, I never had any type of relationship with God. I wasn't brought up in church. Like I did go when I was younger, on my own, but like my family, they didn't go to church on Sundays. They did, you know, so I didn't grow up that way. I would go to like youth service because I was chasing girls, you know. Not I was there for selfish reasons, you know, not to pay attention to what was really happening there. Um, so I didn't know, you know, I didn't have any experience with any type of religions. Um, Never tried to pursue a relationship with a higher power, you know, of any kind. Even those first few runs of sobriety that I had, that was one thing that I never really, I would say, I believe, because I was like, well, you're supposed to. I would say that I believe, but I didn't put any action into that relationship. This time, you know, that's what I had somebody tell me, like, man, you're fucking overthinking this whole thing. You're making this so much more complicated than what it is. Just do it. Put in the action. Get to work and just take these suggestions. And, you know, so I just believe that most people struggle with it. I'll say a lot of people struggle with it from the same standpoint that I had. We just don't know, and we can make everything so much more complicated than what it really is.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, I think step 3 is, and I tell guys this when I'm working with them, it's the most misunderstood step out
Yeah.
of all 12 of them. Because, so if we take the step for what it is, right, made a decision to turn our will and our lives over to the care of God as we understood Him. So we have to understand like where we're at in this process, right? So we think like, oh God, how do I turn my will and my life over? Well, that's not what it's asking us to do. What it's asking us to do is to make a decision to work towards doing that, right? Because if we read in the book, what it tells us is that we can't do that yet because we're blocked by self. We're blocked by resentments, fear, all the stuff that we inventory. So all the stuff that's in steps 4 through 9 is blocking us from God. All these defects of character, the harms, all this stuff, right? So in step 3, so step 1, right, I identify what's wrong with me. Step 2, I identify the solution. It's a power greater than myself. Step 3, I make a decision to seek that power. So, and how do I seek it? I seek it by steps 4 through 9. So, because if I could turn my will over in step 3, this would be a 3-step program. We wouldn't need the other steps because if my will was transformed in step 3, then I'm done, right? Or not done, but I don't need to go really any further. So what we have to do, so would you say like any advice on this step or whatever, is I look at it like it's kind of like a boomerang effect, right? So I make the decision in 3, and then in 4, I inventory all the things that are blocking me, and then 5, I share them with someone, and through that process, I identify all of my character defects, and then at 6 and 7, I go to God and ask Him to remove them, and then I clean up my past, and through that whole process of all that action, my will gets transformed from being self-centered to God-centered, right? Because I can't live in God's will and self-will at the same time, right? So if I destruct self in steps 4 through 9, then my will becomes transformed. It kind of boomerangs back around to step 3. So steps 4 through 9 show me that I've done step 3. So it's not like I do step 3 and then I don't do it anymore. Like if I follow it up with all the action, then I become a transformed person. And now I'm in God's will because it says we make a decision to turn our will, which is my plan, my thoughts, in our lives, our actions. So I'm making a decision to seek doing things differently and let God be the director of my life. And through doing that stuff, that process, self gets smaller, ego becomes right sized, and God gets bigger through that process because they can't exist together if they're the same size. You know what I'm saying? Like one overpowers the other one. So if self is too big, God gets drowned out. If God's bigger, self gets drowned out. So I got to get rid of self in steps 4 through 9, and then I become this whole different person. So it's a lot of times it's that step up. It gets misunderstood because,
A lot of
and I used to do it
A lot.
almost every time
Yeah.
because I used to do it. This is how I used to do step 3. Like, okay, I sit there. Okay, God, I'm giving you my will now. Take it, and then get drunk.
Yeah.
You know, like what? I don't know how to live in God's will because I'm blocked from it. God can't get in because the resentment's blocking it, the fear's blocking it, the shame, the guilt, the remorse, all that stuff is blocking it from getting in. So I got to get rid of that stuff so that that power can come in. That makes sense?
Yeah, yeah. You know, for me, and I think a lot of people, when the first time I ever read it, I disregarded that last part as we
As we
understood it.
him.
You know, I
You
was
think you
like,
have
hold
it
on.
all figured out?
Yeah.
Yeah.
And I think, you know, everybody says, you know, well, when it came time to do his or her 5th step, it just no show. I think it's went back to 3, you know. I think it really kind of 3 is what, I don't know, you know, Bill and Bob make it perfectly clear throughout that whole book. It's your ideal of God, you know, it's your conception of God. And I think that's where, including myself at the beginning, I was just like, you know,
Something that was really cool to me. So, especially when it came to step 3, like I said, I didn't know. So I talked to a lot of people about this God concept. Even not just people in AA. Like Brian and I work with some guys who are very religious, right? And I knew I can go to these guys and I can ask them questions that I don't know and get some different input other than from who was my current sponsor at the time. And he doesn't work with us anymore, but he's young. I think he just turned 21, and he was like 19 at the time, and I'm just talking to him and about everything, the 12 steps, and he starts asking me questions about the 12 steps and what they look like. So I'm going over them with him and I'm explaining them, and we're just talking about it, and he's like, "Man," he's like, "that sounds like the Bible."
Yeah.
And I was like, "Yeah." And you know, and you're talking about we make this decision in step 3, and like what ultimately, even from the Bible standpoint, like what's God's will for us? To be kind to other people, to turn the other cheek, to forgive others, you know, all of these things. And we're like, in step 3, we're like, "Oh, we know what God's will is. How am I supposed to do God's will? I don't know what it is."
Yeah.
But that's exactly what those next steps are doing. We're forgiving other people. We're
letting go.
We're learning how to be kind to other people. And so we are starting through this process to live in our higher power's will for us. You know, that's so like you explained it perfectly. But I thought at that time, I thought it was really cool that this 19-year-old kid was like really helping break it all down for me too. And I'm like, man, that makes sense to me.
Yeah.
You know, so somebody who still, even though he's 21 now, he has never had a drink of alcohol in his life. He's never done it, but he was just as much intrigued with learning about the 12 steps, and he was able to show me where it corresponds in the Bible and stuff like that. And I was like, "I mean, that was really cool." You know, so that was something.
So, like, there's a question for you guys. There's 3 frogs on a log.
Yeah.
One of them decides to jump off. How many frogs are left on the log?
3.
Wow.
Because he didn't put no action behind it.
Exactly. Right. He just decided. We make decisions all day long,
Yeah.
but if we don't follow them up with action, it's just a decision. We didn't do anything. Right. I've decided to quit vaping. I can't tell you how many times, but I'm still vaping.
Yeah.
Right, because I haven't put any action behind it to stop vaping. And it says throughout that book, right, faith without works is
Yeah.
dead.
Yeah.
So I can't experience God's will until I've done taking some action, So yeah, I think
Yeah.
that's a very misunderstood step.
So I know a guy, he's in this program and he's solid in it. But this is kind of and this is a story. He was working with a guy who was like 50 years old. Guy was straight out atheist. And he wanted to get sober and he just having a hard time with God.
Mhm.
And my buddy told him, I don't want you to drink or drug. I want you to pray 3 times a day. And I want you to treat people as good as you can. Treat them no matter how they treat you, and just pray every day. Just pray to God. Don't put a face to it or nothing. Just pray to God and treat people good and don't drink and don't do drugs. And the guy did that, and he kept doing it, and he kept doing it. And 6 months later, he eventually found another sponsor, but he called my buddy and said, "Just wanted to let you know, I'm in the seminary right now. I'm
Wow.
studying to be a preacher."
Wow.
And so it was
180.
like, yeah, and that's he just told him follow the teachings. Basically, I don't want to get too religious. The
Right.
teachings of Christ, basically, what he was suggesting to him. So yeah, it's I know still a lot of people have problems with it.
I
but-
think a good way to put that is, how's the way you're doing it working?
yeah,
If because I was I was an agnostic, and I used to kind of laugh at people that got spiritual or religious or, oh God, help me with this, or I'd be like, whatever, dude.
Mhm.
That's just kind of how I thought. But you don't know what you don't know.
yeah,
I was ignorant, and Josh asked me, and I was like, how is that way working for you? And I was
Sounds
like,
him.
well, it's not. I'm in detox. It's
Yeah.
not working. He's like, well, why don't you try this out and see if it works? And if it doesn't, cool. Let's try it out. And here I am today. Like I pray, I thank God for stuff. Like I see God all the time now. It's just like you were saying, that guy ended up in a seminary. It's like we can make
Yeah.
this 180 with our life
Yeah,
if we're just a little bit open-minded. Like that's
Yeah.
what it really comes down to. Is just a little. You don't gotta
Yeah.
you don't gotta understand it. You
Yeah.
just roll with it, man.
yeah.
Just
That's
roll with
true.
it.
This next one's going to kind of just keep on going on, kind of bounce off that. I want y'all to tell me about, I mean, it might be multiple, but tell me about that one spiritual experience that was kind of the eye opener for you. Like, wow, this is legit. This is legit.
Hmm. It's a tough one.
A lot of mine, I guess I would say has to come through just interactions with other people.
Yeah,
Is where I see it a lot of the times. Um, you know, specifically, I guess like in sponsees, is when I'm able to see it. And I had one sponsee, Ryan, who I was taking through the steps, and he was always, I don't know, I'm not gonna say he was an atheist, but he agnostics, he didn't ever believe in a higher power. And when I took him through the steps, and at that time, I was less than a year sober at that time. And I remember going through the steps with him. And I don't remember what step we were on. We were probably on getting towards the end, 8, 9, something like that. And I remember him getting in my passenger seat of my car to do some step work with me before a meeting, and the look on his face. And like he just looked at me and he said, and literally the first thing he said was, "Man, I think I believe in God." And just to see it on him and to hear it, and I could see it in him, and see the change that was coming over him. And I'm like, man, this is God working, so I see it a lot in other people. I think it's easier for all of us to see it.
Yeah.
I would probably notice things a lot more if I would open my fucking eyes some, but I always see it in other people. And then in situations, just certain situations in my life, like not even getting specifics, but certain things can happen, and I'm just like, man, I am able to see it a lot more often now, to where like just certain things will happen, and I'm like, man, that's God doing this. Like it's not me, it's God. Just like a few weeks ago when someone reached out to us to try to help someone, and the first thing their family said was, well, we owe all the thanks to you and Kelly. And I'm like, man, like that's no, like that's God working through us and through this other individual, what I mean, to come together. And I just, through other people though, would be my response, is where I'm really able to see God's work today.
Yeah,
If that makes sense.
for sure. That's a big part of mine, but I can think of a couple like instances where I was like, wow, like I'm different. Like I was working at Rack and I hadn't worked there very long. I was maybe 7, 8 months sober, if that. And so a guy came in and we're doing his intake. And someone else was doing his intake, and I'm kind of going through his stuff and going through his laundry and all that stuff. And um, they have these big like industrial dryers, and every once in a while you got to clean out the lint trap. So I was like, it's not drying real well, so I'm gonna clean out this lint trap. So I do that, and I open it, and immediately I see 3 little pills there that this guy had in his jeans or something, hidden somewhere, and it came out in the dryer and came out there. And I looked at them, and I thought, I know what those are. I know exactly what those are. Um, and my first thought wasn't, I'm gonna take these, score. Like I wasn't like,
Yeah.
let's go. I was just like, oh, I know what those are. And I thought for a second. I'm gonna be honest. The first thought was, I could take those. And then I was like, no, I don't want to take those. And I thought, no one will know. And I was like, I would know. And if I'm saying no one would know, but I would know, that who's that make me? That means I'm nobody, right? So first thing I did, I went and got one of the nurses, and I was like, hey, found these pills, we need to dispose of them, and we got rid of them. And I was like, man, like I was different, because I was able to be face to face with the thing that I thought I could never get a hold of or get away from, something that had me in the grips for so long and owned me, that I was just like, man, like I don't want that. Like I don't. No part of me wants anything to do with that. I was thinking rationally, and I was just like, I don't want to do that, And I handled myself in an appropriate way, a rational way, not an irrational way. And right then I knew, I was like, this thing is for real. Like, because I've never been able to think like that around a substance. It was always like, yeah, I'm taking this, and I was able to see it for what it was. Like, that's fucking death right there. I don't want nothing to do with it. And so that happened. And then just being able to be around things, like as far as like situations go, like for sure, sponsees, next week I'm giving Jeremy his 1-year token.
Nice.
That's always whenever I get to do that, that's always a big deal. You know, it's like, hey, this thing works. And when you see it working in somebody else and you get to see their family and, you know, people are proud of them and, you know, they're proud of who they are today, like that is spiritual, you know. But, you know, like something for me is people actually want me in their life today. Like it's, and I know to a normal person that hear that, they're like, well, what's the big deal? Like we do. That's
Yeah.
normal. Like that's
Mhm.
been my whole life, you know. But for me, it's a big deal. You know, every time
Yeah.
I go see my parents, my dad hugs me and tells me how proud of me he is, and you know, it's just my mom does the same thing, and you know, and it's just this. I just get this spiritual high off of it, you know, of like this thing works,
It does.
you know, and it's just amazing, you know. But like Evan said, it's a lot of it is when you see that light come on in somebody, you know, and you know that you didn't cause it, but you played a little bitty part in helping them get there. You know, it's just like it's gratifying and it's just amazing, man. Like
It is.
just the mere fact of being able to wake up every day and not obsess about putting a drug or a drink in my body to function through the day is a freaking miracle. That's a spiritual experience that I experience every single day. And sometimes I take it for granted because I don't even think about it. So a lot of times, you know, um, I don't, like I said, I don't think about it. So it's, but when I do notice it though, like when I see someone else struggling and like I get to have these spiritual experiences every day. You know, it's
Yeah.
pretty cool shit.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. I've had several. And,
I have too. I mean, I've had,
and
we could sit here all day and talk
yeah,
about them. And
yeah.
I've had
Um,
hundreds of them.
you know, real brief, the one that I can think of that just kind of come to me was the spiritual experience. One of many I've had is the love other people have for people like me. So
Mhm.
when I first went into the healing place back in 2006, they had me fill out a paper and they asked me like all my kids' names. And I was like, well, I don't want to know. You know, I'm filling all this stuff out. I'm out of it, man. So that was in July. Come about a week and a half before Christmas, they called me down to the office. I'm like, what did I do wrong? Well, I'm down there with a bunch of other guys that's in there. You know, there's like 150 guys on the floor that I'm on. And a bunch of them lined up all around. They take me in this room, and there's this lady, young lady, and she's one of us. She's in recovery. She goes, "Tell me about your kids." You know, starting with the oldest one. I'm like, "What's this about?" Just tell him. What's he like? She's writing it down. What about your middle one? Writing it down. She goes, "We're going to get them all a bunch of Christmas presents. We got donations coming." And you know, and I thought, man, you know what? They know we ain't got a pot to piss in.
Mhm.
And they're helping us make our kids a little more happy. And to me, at that moment, I realized, man, there's something more to this than just not drinking and
Mhm.
drugs, man.
Yeah.
And that was one of many, but that's one that kind of come to mind, you know. And they got a good Christmas, you know. They got to come and pick it up, and it was from Dad, you know.
Yeah.
It's awesome.
And nobody asked no questions, you know. Their mom, how'd you get to know?
Yeah.
So, yeah, that's But the last one I got, we guess we can wrap it up on this one. Is tell us how you've grown in recovery over the past year. This past year, what's some things that have happened that where you have grown over the last? Just for an example, I've come to terms with like some mental issues I have. You know, I don't wanted to ignore that, but I've been addressing it a lot more. You know, so that's something I've grown in my recovery and accepting that, right? And in return, working with guys that also struggle with that too. So,
I guess I can say, you know, my emotional sobriety continues to get better. I have grown, getting to work through some resentments and anger that I held on to a certain individual that I was able to sit
Stole
down.
my thunder.
But I was able to sit down with this person and just work through it and move on. And, you know, in turn, and in like our financial, my family's life, we bought a new house, and, you know, that's growth, because like you said before, like I was never financially responsible for anything. You know what I mean? Like being responsible about it, so I wouldn't have gotten to that point without sobriety in this program and all of you guys and everybody who's led by example for me in my life. And um, just I keep growing by getting to give back to other people. I want to push myself further, as far as getting out there to try to go, instead of just trying to reach newcomers in a meeting. Like I'm wanting to get out there in other ways and to just give back, which is something that I wouldn't have ever been trying to do before. I would have just kind of hid, and I'm able to face, because that stuff's still scary today, but I'm able to face fears today, and just to get out there and do some different things. And so those are just a few of the ways over the last year or so that I can think of off the top of my head.
Yeah, I think Evan took a lot of things I was going to say, but facing fears is one for sure. That's something that I've always struggled with. Um, I've never really had a knowledge problem as far as like what I need to do. It was always an application problem. Like I was always too scared to put in the action to do something, and because I'm so worried about the outcome. If I'm not going to get the outcome I want, I'm not even going to try. And that's changed dramatically in the last year. Like I'm trying to do things with my life. I'm trying to improve myself physically, mentally, spiritually. I'm constantly seeking different avenues, different ways I can learn things, different ways I can, even if I know something, okay, how can I apply it better? Because obviously I'm not applying it well, because a lot of times that's our problem with a lot of things. I know I need to get sober. I just don't know how to apply that knowledge, So I think for me is just putting myself out there, because I've lived most of my life on regret, and life's too short to have all these regrets. If I fail, I fucking fail. So I'll try again. Like I'm not going to succeed at everything, but I'm going to miss every shot I don't take for 100%. So I think that forgiveness is a big thing that I've been trying to work on as well. Evan touched on that some, and I think the way that I looked at that was I used to just be like, well, fuck him.
Yeah.
He screwed me over, she screwed me over, fuck them, and hold on to that. And it would eat me alive. But I was watching something on YouTube one time, and this guy, the speaker was talking about you don't know real freedom until you can forgive someone that did something to you, and then you turn around and give them forgiveness. So, and what I mean by that is like I can forgive things that have happened because someone gave me forgiveness for all the things that I've done. I've done a lot of grimy things in my life, and people have forgiven me. So if I can turn around and grant someone that same grace and give them that forgiveness that someone gave me, then I can get free. And um, doesn't mean that things still don't hurt or that relationships aren't changed, stuff like that. But at least I can get free of it. I can forgive that person and see that person for what they were at the time, because people were able to do that for me because I'm not a saint by any means, So I think forgiveness, working on forgiveness, because I've never been able to do that, So I was only able to do that through the program. That's what taught me. But Did you have question 4? You said you were going to skip it and come back to it.
Yeah, if y'all want to.
I'm curious.
Okay.
These have been really good questions.
And also, I wanted to say
really
this.
challenging my thought.
You know, if you ever think you're in just not worth a crap, like sometimes I get up in my head and I think that for some silly reason, remember, you make a profound difference
Hell yeah.
in somebody's life.
That's right.
So number 4 was tell us about service work, sponsorship, community influence. I know you guys were talking about maybe doing some community influence. That's why I come up with that. Relationships, etc. that you have in your sobriety that maybe you didn't have before
Hmm.
you got sober. So that should be like all kinds of answers.
Yeah, for sure.
So you said a lot.
I
You
know,
said a
right?
lot.
Number 4.
So trying to start with like relationships, obviously, relationships with my wife and kids. I can show up today and be the husband and father that I'm meant to be. With my family, I'm able to be the son that I always should have been, that I wasn't. You know, my relationships with you guys and my immediate group of guys. Like, I know I can call you guys at any point. If I need anything, you guys would be there for me, and I think you know the same. If you all called me, I'm always there. You know, which I've never. I had groups of friends growing up, but I've never had this type of relationship with other men in my life to where I know I can call you guys, I can fucking cry, I can yell, I can, you know, whatever.
Cry while yelling.
Right, whatever, you know, and you guys aren't gonna be like, dude, he's fucked up, he needs to go on somewhere, you know. Y'all are gonna be there for me. I've never had that before, and I'll say it now, and I've always said it since we've all been running together. Like, I don't know where I would be without you guys. I don't know if I would still be sober today if I wasn't in the program and the fellowship, in both. What else we got? Sponsorship. As far as the service goes, you know, I've got several sponsees. I don't have any actively working the steps at the moment, but, you know, just getting to build those relationships with these guys and pass on what was given to me, and give back, you know, then to see their lives change. And like, you know, Evan's my sponsee that he just moved to Florida, and like, it just makes me
The golden child.
Yeah, it makes me so happy every time I talk to him, because even though he moved away from his immediate support group here, like, the kid is just killing it. You know what I mean? He is doing this thing. Even when he didn't know anybody in Florida, he immediately got involved and started trying to give back, and it's awesome. You know, it's amazing. And you know, as far as like the community goes, I'm not a fucking menace.
Yeah.
Right.
I was hoping you'd see deeper into that.
Yeah.
Yeah,
You did.
I used to terrorize Bullitt County and Jefferson County. You know what I mean? I don't do that nowadays. Something I get to do at the end of October. I get to go speak at this high school, and I get to sit on a panel. And I didn't know at first, but I get to sit on a panel with, you know, a judge that I used to stand in front of in trouble with charges, and now I get to stand next to them on this panel.
So cool.
You know what I mean? And then, yeah, it's just stuff like that. It's amazing. And then we're trying to put together some kind of community event to just spread more awareness. You know, there's still that stigma out there. I think God has intervened so much and helped. The stigma's still there. The stigma's not broken.
It's lessened.
But it's lessened over time.
Yeah.
Like, people don't look at us the way they used to. Some people still do, but it's a lot more. People are starting to understand because it's affected them.
Yeah.
You know, and now God is working through them, even the ones that have been affected in the
Yeah.
worst possible way and have lost loved ones due to this disease. So we just we want to get out there in the community and pass out resources and just be there, and even just to put our faces out there to show people like, hey, there is a way out, like just for them to physically see it. So I guess that's briefly touching on those there.
Yeah, I think for
You,
me,
you need this.
no, I think that I've been blessed to be able to sponsor a lot of guys, and I've had that opportunity through service because of service work, because going up to the treatment centers and stuff like that, and it really puts me in front of a lot of newcomers. Courage to Change, that home group, when I was a member there's one of the really good things about that group is there's a lot of newcomers. So um, making myself available through service work got me to be able to sponsor a lot of guys. And in turn, I got so many benefits from sponsoring guys. And, you know, I believe that God, Evan was kind of touching on this. I think God is in the trenches. I think he's in the pots and pans. He's not on some spiritual mountaintop. He's down in the dirty gutters and down here, where people are getting your hands dirty. I think that's a big thing. And I don't know a lot about the Bible, but I think there's a part in the Bible to where he made Peter fisherman of men, and he basically told him, like, you catch them and I'll clean them. Not he'll catch them and Peter can do the dirty work and clean them. Like, he'll clean them. Like, so what that means to me is that he's in the pots and the pans, that he's down there getting his hands dirty. And if we want to get close to our higher power, then we need to get our hands dirty. And having that philosophy of, working with the new guys, meeting them at the treatment center, getting involved in the home group with service work, whether it's greeting, chairing, someone asks you to speak, things like that. All that stuff is so paramount. And then, like, in the community, we're trying to build a community through this. It's not just always about getting out in the community. Like, we're trying to build a community here. We're trying to get different points out, maybe to help somebody who's still struggling, things like that. So trying to provide some kind of service, for something to give people something to listen to where they can kind of get maybe a different insight or outlook on recovery, how steps are worked or things like that, things that they might not be getting somewhere else. So I think that's important. Relationships. Yeah, like, I actually have relationships today. Like, they're not transactional, which is pretty cool. Like, if someone calls me, they're calling me because they actually want to talk to me, or they're wondering, like, how I'm actually doing. It's not, hey, can you get something for me? Or, hey, like, you owe me money. It's none of that stuff anymore. It's genuine relationships. And I think they're just awesome. Like, the fact that we three guys can sit around on a Friday night and just talk about stuff like this. It's therapeutic. It's fellowship. It's bonding. And I love doing stuff like this. When we meet at your house, got a tight knit group of guys that we're all just trying to better ourselves. We're trying to help each other, and we don't want to stay stuck. We're all trying to grow. Like, that's what the steps are about. It's about, growth. We want to grow to be better men, better fathers, better husbands, role models, whatever. So yeah, I mean, all that stuff is, I think they all work together. It's like they all kind of it's like a snowball effect, you know, like a big snowball rolling down a hill. You know, it's once I start doing some service work, then I can start picking up some sponsees, then I can get out in the community, then my relationships improve, and you know, all these things they just build, they compound. You know, they just keep stacking on top of each other. So, and I want to keep that momentum going. You know, so I need to keep doing what I had to do to get here. So I'm just going to keep doing that. These are some really good questions, man, for you to come up with in 5 minutes, man. Like,
Yeah.
like
Maybe
seriously.
can.
Maybe.
You know, you was talking about God, and I don't know who said it, but it's a quote. It said, "God's like a Kentucky gentleman. He doesn't go where he's not invited, and he doesn't stay where he's not wanted."
Mhm.
So, and you know, like my take on this question, or in the number 4 was, you know, who can I be at work? You know, can I be the same guy at work I can be when I'm
Right.
that hour or that time here or
Mhm.
the time, and even who can I be on that commute from my house to work? You know, that's how I can be of service to the community and to my fellows. You know, like the guys at work. You know, they all know I'm in recovery. So if I'm acting like a jackass, what's that say about who I'm trying to represent? You know?
Yeah, like an ambassador for.
Yeah, yeah. You know, it'd be like if they Orkin sent the guy to spray your house and he didn't know nothing about bugs. You know what I'm saying?
Yeah. Yeah. Do I need to hire these people?
So I should know something about how to treat a human being if I'm in the program of Alcoholics Anonymous, right?
Yeah, for sure.
So, but guys, I appreciate y'all letting
Yeah,
me
man.
host.
Shit, man.
Yeah, it was. It was real good shit. Thanks, man. Appreciate it.
Anything to wrap us up?
You didn't take that far.
No, I didn't think that far. Just stay plugged in. If you have problems, reach out. There's over 400 meetings in Louisville and surrounding counties. There's no excuse not to get to a meeting. They're online.
Mhm.
There's just so much recovery out there. It's of course me saying it. There's no excuse for me, all right? So
I'll say it. There's no excuse for anybody.
yeah.
Yeah.
Excuses are like assholes. We all have them, and they all stink.
All right. Thanks,
All
Tony.
right, man. Thank you guys.
Thanks,
Appreciate you.